If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard in Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to PWZ Podcast. This is the Professor, Rick Del Santo, and joining me is the Big Cat, a.k.a. the Greenport Destroyer, Andy Nichols. And there's a lot going on in the professional wrestling world this week, isn't it, Andy?
Oh, yeah, and the Mets, but that's a whole other side note. I know this isn't a baseball podcast. Hey, guys, another thing, too. Should I wear the hat? Should I not wear the hat? I don't know.
Oh, well, fix that ugly mug of yours, so wear the hat. And coming up in a few minutes, we also have a special guest. Andy, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, we have a gentleman. He's if you're a fan of Ring Warriors or AML or Major League Wrestling, which we're going to be talking about, you should know this man. He's done commentary and announcing for all these groups. A man by the name of The Voice, Blake Chadwick. Back on the Pro Wrestling World podcast, and we have a very special guest right now as we talk about this week's pro wrestling events. He is the voice of Ring Warriors, owned by Howard Brody. He is the voice of VCW. He is the voice of AML, and a company we both love to the max. He is the voice of Major League Wrestling, MLW. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the voice himself, the voice Blake Chadwick, to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you on, man. We were just doing this show. We're discussing some wrestling stuff going on and some of the TV shows from the past week. And I thought to myself, what would be cooler than bringing on the ring announcer from Major League Wrestling, who also worked for Howard Brody's Ring Warriors.
Absolutely, certainly glad to be here, and you did throw a few of my accolades there. I also do WrestleCade, which is a big wrestling event there on the East Coast.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I did Paragon Pro Wrestling, which of course was on the Pop Network and out in Las Vegas, same place that Howard Brody's Ring Warriors was filmed the second time around, and also worked with the West Coast Wrestling Connection up there in the Pacific Northwest. So I don't know if some people might have heard of that.
There's also a resume. You're an unofficial member of the Slambinos. Is that true?
Not a Slambino. I mean, I'll take credit for the Breakfast Club, but not the Slambinos.
Why would you take credit for that garbage?
Because at least the food tastes better.
Yeah, I guess so. But there's a guy, AJ. He's a real jerk, I know. But anyway.
I won't tell him you said that.
Oh, please don't. And, I'm sure he's probably watching right now, because he's got nothing better to do with his life. But anyway, he's probably making a TikTok video as we speak. Anyway, so Blake, we were just discussing Smackdown from last week, and we're going to roll into MLW Kinfs of Colosseum that just aired this past week. Now, you were a major part of that. They actually even shouted you out on the broadcast. And MLW... I was a fan of the first incarnation many years ago.
Okay.
When they had guys like Steve Corino, Terry Funk, Loki, the original.
Well, a lot of that was down here in South Florida.
Right. Actually, I think they started in New York. They did the first taping or two in New York, where I was living at the time. And then they gravitated down to Florida. And, the Extreme Horsemen, just great. Steve Dr. Death Williams, great stuff. Were you watching it back then?
I wasn't watching it back then. I was somewhat familiar with it. I followed it a little bit on the internet, read results and just kind of followed the company and sort of, some of the other different organizations that sort of branched out, like XPW, ones that branched out after WCW folded, and of course TNA. So, it's one of those places that, I was aware of, but I didn't see a whole lot of. And Ring of Honor, you can obviously throw in there as well. But yeah, I didn't watch a whole lot of it. I've seen some since then, but not back in 2002 and 3.
Now, for those who don't really know the history, MLW, I guess it's been a couple of years now. Cord Bauer, the owner of MLW, he wanted to do a one-off show, just kind of like he was doing the podcast. He wanted to do a one-off kind of reunion show, and then it ended up taking on a life of its own. And here we are, a couple of years later, and he's got a weekly episodic pro wrestling show, and you're actually working with the organization now, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I've actually have a little bit of a history with MLW. It's a little interesting ride I've had with them. I started with them back in November of last year, or I should say 2019, as we're already in 2021. But I started with them back in November of 2019. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to watch their pay-per-view event that they put on live from Chicago, which was back then. I did the ring announcing there. I don't know if you recall. But, I was there with them in Chicago. They brought me into the Cicero Stadium, and that was one of the best events I've ever done in my career. I mean, that's one of the best things I've ever been a part of. And that was a great, raucous crowd, 3,500 plus. And, sold out, just packed to the gills. And, Chicago, as we know, right up there with Philadelphia and New York, and, one of the best fan bases in terms of professional wrestling out there. So it was great to be a part of that. The Fatu and LA Park match was just, out of control. And, just to be ringside for that and to see Selena go through the table and my buddy Frank Gastineau, who's now with AEW, one of their officials, to see him get that fireball right in the face. That was something that was, pretty cool. I felt that myself, sitting about 10, 15 feet away from it. So, being a part of that pay-per-view with them was great. And then going on, I did the TV tapings in Orlando. Right after that, I was with them for the next month or so, right on through the Thanksgiving taping and kind of right into the December months. And for whatever reason, they decided to go a different direction, and they brought someone else on board who has since left the company for various reasons that we don't need to necessarily discuss here on this podcast. But they had an opening, and for the restart, so. Saint Laurent, who was done a fantastic job with Rich Bocchini at the color position on the commentary. I really have to give credit to him. Saint Laurent, he's been a part of some broadcasts in the past. He's a Ring of Honor back in the day. He's been around for a long time, but he's done a great job with Rich Bocchini on the restart. And he reached out to me, brought me back on board, and I've been doing all the broadcasts since back in November when the restart officially kicked back off. And, here we are in mid-January now almost. And, so it's been a couple months almost. And, we should have a couple of, about a month or so, maybe 6 weeks worth of stuff ready to continue to go forward. And then hopefully, the next time MLW wants to do something, hopefully with fans in attendance, they bring me back.
Very cool. And we were actually going to discuss the this week's episode, the Kings of Colosseum special that they did. Is it cool if we kind of run it down with some notes here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of these things where, not to pull back the curtain too much, but when we're doing everything for the restart, I was not necessarily aware that there was your proverbial Clash of the Champions kind of TV special built up to the Kings of the Colosseum. I was aware of the branding of it, but it's one of these things that watching it play out on TV isn't exactly how it played out, when we're putting it together. So it's certainly interesting to see, at least from my perspective, as someone who's a part of the company.
Yeah, and you just set us up for this perfectly. Definitely was almost like their Clash of Champions. And Rick, the show opened up with a video package, kind of setting up Hammerstone as the next big challenger for Jacob Fatu's MLW Heavyweight Championship. Almost setting up, or I perceived it as if it was setting up Hammerstone to be the big baby face at the end of the day.
That's a matchup I'd really like to see down the road.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things as a fan, and MLW certainly caters to the knowledgeable fan, the smart fan,
right?
And just watching what they're doing and watching the programming and seeing the players in place. I mean, who doesn't want to see Hammerstone and Fatu go at it? And that seems to be the direction that hopefully we're heading towards. And I'd imagine that's something that might be reserved for when people are around and the fans are able to be a part of it. If you're familiar with PCW, Pacific Coast Wrestling, a great promotion out there on the West Coast in the state of California, those two I do believe actually have wrestled before for that promotion once in the past. And Joseph Samael of Contra is very instrumental in that promotion. So I think they actually have gone at it once. I want to say maybe back in 2018, maybe 2019. But Hammerstone and Fatu, two of the best athletes, in the game today, especially non-WWE and AEW performers. So I definitely would love to see that happen as soon as we can get to it in MLW.
And I'm assuming that Davey Boy Jr. is no longer with the organization. I think he's a free agent now. I could be wrong, but Hammerstone is definitely stepping up as in the role of the top big man babyface in the company, and I really think he can carry the company a long way because if judging Hammerstone on when he first came in MLW to now, he's like a whole different person. He's developed so much. I love his character.
Yeah, Hammerstone's a guy that I've known at this point, I've known Hammer for 5.5 years. I mean, I've worked with the guy all over the country. When I came with my first, outside of Ring Warriors, my first major break was with Paragon Pro Wrestling back in the fall of 2015. That was my first real national appearance. The first time I worked, cross country. And I got to really meet and, interact with and work with some of these West Coast guys. And Hammer's the guy that to me stood out more than just about anybody. At the time, he was teaming with someone who very familiar with down here in South Florida, Alex Chamberlain, who you might have seen on AEW Dark. And, he's been a veteran for many, many years. He's been around a long time. But those two were in a tag team together at the time. And, Hammerstone, and I just really, I've watched him grow. I mean, from there to, I worked with him for WCWC, for the West Coast Wrestling Connection out in the Pacific Northwest. And I've worked with Hammerstone at Ring Warriors, as, Andy was mentioning, obviously, with Howard Brody's organization.
Howard Brody, yep.
On WGN America. And, Hammer's, I just watched him evolve and watched him grow. And as you guys pointed out, he's really stepped up and become that big-time babyface performer. And he's somebody that, you can rely on. You could put that title on him, and he's going to be the first guy in the building and the last guy to leave. He's that kind of talent. And he's someone to really keep an eye on in 2021. And I think is going to really continue to break out. And, back to Davey Boy Smith, it does look like he's done with MLW. He had 2 matches so far on the restart, unsuccessful on both, wrestled Jacob in a great title match. Obviously Jacob's still the heavyweight champion of the world, and then couldn't get out of the first round of the Opera Cup. And unfortunately bowed out there to, I believe it was Loki, if I'm not mistaken. He lost there in the first round of the Opera Cup. And, Davey Boy's a great guy, great talent. Certainly, if you want to talk about badass, he's right up there in terms of badass when it comes to professional wrestling business. I don't think there's many guys who legitimately are tough and can, handle their business as much as Davey Boy Smith Jr. And actually, I got to be his roommate, during one of those events there. So I got to kind of see how he operates a little bit more than normal. And, he's certainly a championship caliber athlete. And that's somebody that, whether it's a return to WWE or, a debut in AEW, or whether he just wants to go full-time to Japan, I definitely think Davey Boy Smith Jr., he's got a lot left in the tank. And I think we're going to still see some big stuff from him.
But is he a good roommate?
Well, it was one of these things that got thrown on me last minute because you gotta remember, I was there the whole time and he wasn't. I mean, he was only there for a brief period. Had 2 matches, so he's not really there very long. So it was something where I guess they didn't have a room ready for him. So me, unfortunately, sometimes the ring announcer, you're kind of on the bottom of the rung of the ladder there, and they said, hey. You got a little extra room, so let Davey Boy come on in. It was totally fine. I mean, it's one of these guys that I made sure that I wasn't loud. I made sure that I didn't disrupt him, and he didn't have much to say. I mean, he kind of did his own thing, and it was what it was. But yeah, I mean, he's the kind of guy. I mean, physically, I mean, at his size and his height and his athleticism. I mean, there's no reason to think there's not a long run still left in his tank, despite the fact that we've seen him on TV at this point for 15 years.
Now, before we get back into Kings of Colosseum, another question. How is MLW handling their tapings right now? Are they doing one night of tapings and then done, or are they doing a couple nights in a row to try to get more content in a shorter period of time to keep guys from traveling so much?
Kind of doing like a mass taping, like a lot of stuff at once, and then kind of keep it spread out. So like you were just saying, to limit travel. They don't want as many tapings as possible. They want as few as possible. So it's one of those things where they just try to keep the talent healthy, fresh, and keep everything moving.
One thing I want to ask you is where's this recorded? Because I really love the setup of the tapings.
It's the same place that we did the Orlando tapings last year.
Okay. I want to ask you about one thing, and then I'll hand it back over to Andy. Is what's it like working with? There's a guy that works on there that's from my area, and he trained here at one of the local schools, trained by Paul Roma and Mario Mancini. What's it like working with Richard Holiday?
I'm glad you brought that up. Richard Holiday, I mean, he's a great talent. I mean, he's somebody that MLW is lucky to have because he's that prototypical WWE TV kind of talent. And
that's
MLW
what I've said, yeah.
MLW has the ability to showcase him in a very nice way. He's got a feud going on now with Savio Vega with the Caribbean strap. And I'll tell you what, not to play too much of a spoiler or anything, but there was Andy, you might remember this a couple of months ago. Sports Illustrated, a couple of other outlets put out a press release when MLW right after the restart was announced, and they kind of alluded to a certain sports entity that I guess was going to be a part of MLW. And you can obviously Google this. You can check this out. I'm not going to give you too much more information, but that's somebody that, moving forward sometime very soon, you should expect to see around Richard Holiday. And it's going to help and just totally enhance what he's doing. And he's the kind of guy, again, I don't know how his contract's set up, but hopefully for MLW, they can lock him up again when they have to re-sign him, because it's going to be very tough to bid against the ML or the AEWs and the WWEs for a guy like Richard Holiday, because to me, he's that 5-tool player, that complete package, and everything. He's got everything it takes to succeed at the highest level.
I think that he's got a bright future ahead of him, and it's always cool. He comes home and does shows around the area whenever and I just think that guy's got star written all over him, just like he said.
To that point, and I know we're going to talk about the TV show eventually, but there's a lot of questions here. To that point, though, we just talked about Hammerstone, we talked about Holiday, heck, we even talked about Contra. I don't think Court Bauer gets enough credit for his talent development. Paul Heyman's one of those guys you always heard how he got the best out of his talent. He played to their strengths. I think Court Bauer is cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, Court's a genius. I mean, to put together. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, to put together a company like this and to succeed, the first time around in a completely different climate, and then to come back in 2017 in a completely different climate, and to succeed once again, and to continue it, into 2018 and 19, and to tour around the country, whether it be Philadelphia, Chicago, Dallas, down here in Florida, in Miami, in Orlando, all over the country. I mean, Court has been, instrumental in growing the MLW brand. I mean, the live pay-per-view in Chicago, I mean, to me, that was such a not only just a major highlight in my career, but for the MLW brand. I mean, to go live on pay-per-view. I mean, Ring of Honor does that, Impact does that, WWE does that, AEW does that, but to be on that same level, I mean, it's really saying, hey, we've arrived, and we're not just some super indie kind of brand. So I mean, to be able to have it tour the country and to be on national TV on various outlets, to be popular internationally, and then to have some of the talent you guys mentioned. I mean, he's developed some great talent, and a lot of these guys are hot free agents. I mean, even a guy like a Brian Pillman Jr., I mean, we all know who Brian Pillman is. We all know the lineage. But to put him in the dynasty, or rather the Hart Foundation, to put him against the dynasty, to have him feud, to put him in a national spotlight, and now you see him picked up by AEW. You look at a guy like Mance Warner, talking about him potentially getting picked up by AEW. I mean, Richard Holiday, we mentioned him. Hammerstone, we mentioned him. These guys are all talents we've heard of before, but Court Bauer's put them on the national spotlight and put them in positions to succeed and enhance the most out of what they've got. And that's exactly why he's everything you guys just said. He's somebody right in that same breath of all-time talent developers.
And also his booking of Jacob Fatu in the top spot. He's the only world heavyweight champion right now, or his only company rather, with a world heavyweight champion right now who's just a mean, nasty heel. So the booking is contrary to what all the other companies are doing, and I like that.
Jacob is a very special talent, and he's somebody I've known for about 3.5 years or so. I first met Jacob as a part of the West Coast Wrestling Connection. He came and did a taping out there in the Pacific Northwest with us. He unfortunately only lasted with the company for one taping, but in that brief glimpse, I got to see how much of a talent he is. And personally, I mean, Andy, you probably know this. I'm not so sure if anybody else, listening and watching knows this, but I happen to be very close with Gangrel. And Gangrel is very well noted to have trained Jacob Fatu, to have a big hand in training Jacob. And Jacob's come down here to South Florida. He's had a couple of matches for Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum. They've been absolutely incredible, off-the-charts matches. And you look at him here with MLW. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. He's going out there and having banger after banger singles matches. But then he comes down here for Gangrel, and you're looking at a situation where he's teaming with Lance Anoa'i, his cousin. They're teaming as the Samoan Strike Force, and it literally looks like Samu and Fatu, the Samoan SWAT team back in '89. I mean, these guys, it's amazing how he can adapt from the singles to the tag and be that much of a talent. I mean, if Jacob had, I guess some issues maybe in his earlier in his career or before he started wrestling that potentially have held him back. And I think that's the reason, honestly, right now you don't see him on WWE TV.
Yeah, there's been speculation of that. And I'm telling you right now, somebody needs to do a documentary on the Samoan dynasty. I'm calling The Rock out right now. He needs to put some money behind that and make it happen. But anyway, let's get back into the show. And we start off the Kings of Colosseum with the Von Erich brothers defending the tag team titles against the Dirty Blondes with Aria Blake. Rick, any thoughts on this?
I thought it was a really good brawl. I didn't get to see the whole thing. So, but I did like the brawl all over the arena. I thought it was really fun to watch. It was presented very old school and it was just awesome in my eyes, the way that I saw it.
And the Von Erichs were victorious again. Dirty Blondes, I love the Dirty Blondes though, Blake. What do you know about the Dirty Blondes?
The Blondes are two of my favorites. I mean, I've loved those guys since day one. I mean, they're real throwbacks. I mean, they remind me of kind of, the Freebirds, kind of Terry Gordy in there. You see you see a lot of old school talent. You see two guys that truly get it. I mean, they get the professional wrestling business, and I mean, to me, they're everything that you'd want, and they bring a lot to the table. Hopefully, they can stick around a little bit with MLW. Unfortunately, they didn't win the tag team championships, but they have looked pretty strong since their return in the restart. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think Michael Patrick's a great veteran. He's a guy that, certainly knows what he's doing in the ring. He's been around a long time. A lot of people probably don't realize that he's been around, 20 years or so. But you look at Leo Bryan, and I'll tell you what, something else you probably don't realize. I mean, this kid's not even 25 years old. I mean, wow. He looks like a rugged veteran, but he's like 23. He's a tremendous talent. He's a great kid. He's never going to give you any problems. And he's somebody. He's gotten in better shape recently. He's someone in the next few years, I'd be shocked if you didn't see him on NXT. I mean, I could see them putting the situation together. I mean, I just see it right now, like a Trevor Lee and a Leo Bryan, kind of a new Freebirds kind of thing. I could totally see something like that.
From there, we went to a Von Erich's promo backstage with the Contra unit logo flashes on the screen a few times, kind of foreshadowing what might be coming for the Von Erichs. And then we have highlights of one of the most underrated guys in the business, Filthy Tom Lawler, beating Loki to win the 2020 Opera Cup. I'm a big Filthy Tom fan.
Filthy Tom is one of those guys that every time out there, it seems like he gets more and more comfortable as a pro wrestler. A lot of guys you see doing the crossover, they can get it done in the ring, but they don't really get the whole pro wrestling aspect of it. But Filthy Tom really seems to get it. And flanked by Dominic Guarini and Kevin Koo, it seems like he's really kind of getting things going here, and he's got his group together. And they don't have Eric Stevens anymore. I mean, he's not in the business anymore. But it seems like they've got things going on, and I really like to see what happens moving forward, because Tom Lawler's the kind of guy that I don't know if, with his age and injuries and everything, if he'd be in that Matt Riddle role with WWE, but I think he could really thrive and be a big asset for MLW as long as he wants to wrestle.
Well, Rick, what do you think about this? I think guys like Tom Lawler and Matt Riddle are so successful in the business, or stand a chance to be so successful in the business, because they have a genuine passion. They're not necessarily from the business, but they're passionate about the business. So when they get in, they're more appreciative of what they have.
Yeah, I think that's true. That they I don't know. I think the crossover is different. Like he said, it's different for different people, and there's certain people that have more trouble with it. But Riddle and Lawler they did transfer over well, and Lawler just does get better and better every time in the ring. He's quite impressive.
Tom's got a funny knack for, he's not a comedic wrestler, but he'll throw in a funny line like that, like in a very heelish way sometimes. But you can't help it.
Well, it's almost the same way we saw with Kurt Angle back in 99, 2000. Where he was that amateur kind of guy, but he came in there, and when he started being able to kind of get the promo stuff, and he kind of understood pro wrestling and understood his role, then I feel like he really became a complete performer. And I think that's exactly the same kind of thing you're seeing with Lawler.
Absolutely. And then from there we go to a couple of promos from Leo Rush and Myron Reed building up the match at the end of the show. Reed says he looks up to us, but you must beat your idols to build your legacy. And Myron Reed is one of those guys that people are sleeping on and you need to watch. I'm telling you right now.
Myron Reed is a fantastic talent. When it comes to athleticism, he's got everything that you see from all the top cruiserweights around the world. I mean, he is one of those top high-flying cruiserweight kind of talents. And, right now he's got an opportunity with MLW, and he's right up there in the same thing that, you guys were talking about. I mean, Rick was mentioning it, Andy, you mentioned it, in terms of developing talent with Court Bauer. Myron Reed is on that list, because he's the kind of guy that, he was on the indies, he was grinding his way, and then he got an opportunity, and right up there with Jordan Oliver, tag team partner, same kind of thing, and these guys are getting opportunities to showcase themselves. I think that Myron Reed still has a little bit more to go before he gets to where he could, maybe get to another level. But I think in 2021 and what you saw with this match with Lio Rush, and they're going to have a rematch, I believe, coming up pretty soon as well. That's what's going to help get him to the next level as well, going toe to toe with these top guys and being able to hang.
Well, I think feuds and programs, especially when you get a guy like Lio Rush who's got somewhat of a pedigree already, that's really what elevates guys. It's not necessarily one match. A program is really what elevates the guys. But from there, we actually go into the match between Myron Reed and Lio Rush. And it starts out kind of slow, feeling each other out, and I like that. And they do a couple of high-flying moves, and they kind of go back to the feeling out process. Very good match to prove that they're not just, flippy dippies all the time. They did plenty of the flippy dippy stuff, but they could do a match with wrestling too.
Absolutely.
And of course, Lio Rush is your new middleweight champion. It's like they got all their high flying stuff in, but that wasn't the foundation of the match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. And Jordan Oliver, that kid's grown on me. The first couple times I saw him, he really irritated me to the point where I didn't want to watch. But
that's how I felt too in the beginning as well. Yeah.
But again, it's that thing like Court saw something in him, I'm assuming, and the kid has developed into he's developed into that character, but he doesn't make you want to change a channel. You know what I mean? So He is getting the proper heat right now. Then we get a Lio Rush promo backstage, and then we go into a Hammerstone promo where he's interrupted by the costume. And then we get a Filthy Island coming soon promo for Tom Lawler. So I'm curious to see. Do you have any insight on Filthy Island?
It's going to be unique. That's all I'll say. It's not your typical setup, I guess. I'm trying to think of the best comparison here, but all I'm going to say is definitely tune in because it's going to be cool.
And then we go to a segment where Selena De La Renta announces that she's the executive producer this coming week. So this Wednesday night, don't miss it because she announced that Von Erichs will defend the tag team titles against Lost Parks with Tom Lawler as referee. So that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting. And all I'll say is that's going to be wild. That's all I'll say.
And they also announced January 20th, the following week, Jacob Fatu defends the World Heavyweight Championship against ACH.
Oh, yeah. And, that's the kind of guy that, he had some issues in the WWE and they parted ways, and he came back on the indie scene when I guess he deemed himself mentally healthy, and MLW pounced on it and came to an agreement with ACH. You saw him a part of the Opera Cup, and he's been, thriving on the television, and he's the kind of guy that adds depth. I mean, he can give it a go in the middleweight division. He can give it a go for the heavyweight division, and, he's that recognizable name you can kind of plug anywhere on the card, and that's the versatility that anyone that likes to book and anyone that likes to run a promotion. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you want to have.
Right. And then we go to an Injustice backstage promo, and out comes Contra, and there's a new member of Contra, and he's looking jacked, and he's looking better than ever. Daivari.
Oh, when I first saw Daivari backstage, I mean, I thought he was getting ready for WrestleMania. I mean, he looks unreal.
I know.
He's an asset, and he's someone that's been helping out, doing agenting as well, and he's a veteran. I mean, the guy's been around a long time. Ironically, I was just watching Royal Rumble 2006 the other day. Here he comes in the main event, managing Mark Henry. I mean, Daivari, he's been around. I mean, the guy's done a ton of stuff. I mean, and to me, anytime that you pretty much take like the big boot and leg drop from Hogan at Mania, you have a say in something. So, the guy, he has a lot to offer, and MLW is lucky to have him. And Contra unit, to me, you throw him in there with Simon Gotch and obviously Sam Ayel and Fatu. That beefs up the unit a little bit, and I think gives them a little bit of an upgrade over some of the other members they've had.
And actually, leading up to this, throughout the night, about 2 or 3 times, they kept saying we were going to see Simon Gotch against Jordan Oliver, and they kept hinting that there were some issues for that match. We never got that match, and that leads me to wonder where Simon Gotch is during all this that's going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then we have we go into the main event for the open weight championship, and the guy we were talking about previously, Hammerstone, takes on a guy who looks awfully familiar to me, a guy named Madskrueger. What do you know about Madskrueger? Because he looks familiar.
I've seen him before, but Madskrueger is he's a force. I mean, that's a I don't know how Contra Unit plans to utilize him, moving forward, but he's the kind of guy that is a difference maker. And, I don't know the type of style that he will implement as Madskrueger, but, he's got size, he's got strength, he's got length, and, you put him in there with anyone. If you can make Hammerstone, who right now is, he's about 6'1", he's hovered in the 260, 270 range. I mean, if you can make him look a little small, then you got some serious size behind you.
They don't call him the Meat Castle for nothing, baby. You know what I mean?
Right.
But no, but when Kruger comes out to the ring, it was quite the spectacle. He had about 4 or 5 flag bearers there with Contra flags on the rampway, which I thought was cool. It added to the big match feel. It was a big man brawl. It ended up going to a double count out, and the show just kind of ended abruptly at that point. Very good show. I really enjoyed the show. Thing I like about MLW is it reminds me of the old territories. There's a lot of diversity. I think ECW is the obvious comparison, but it's not an ECW impersonator either by any means.
No, definitely not. I mean, when I was doing the pay-per-view in Chicago, mentally I was sitting there ringside, and I said to myself, I'd imagine this is sort of what ECW felt like. It had that vibe where, it felt a little underground, but, felt cool and just felt a little alternative. But, it all depends. I think they've carved out their own niche, though, in the current wrestling climate. I mean, you look around and you can't really compare any other promotion with what MLW's doing.
No, and I wish more people were up on it. A lot of people are sleeping on it right now, and I've been talking about it for a couple of years now. I wish people would actually give it a shot.
And it has a very old school vibe. And that's the thing a lot of people don't realize. Court Bauer, he's got a lot of what he does that he brings to the table. I mean, he's a disciple of a Gary Hart. I mean, he's been around a long time, and he has a lot of knowledge of older generations and how things used to be. And if you look at the presentation of MLW, yeah, it's a little gritty. Yeah, sometimes it has that kind of ECW vibe to it, but it also has a little bit of an old school vibe to it. And some of the angles and some of the the matches you see played out, they have that Saturday morning kind of feel to it in a way. And to me, that hybrid that it brings to the table between the high flying lucha libre and the MMA style, and your big man, you're brawling with the and all the tables and all that kind of stuff, and then your technical wrestling with guys. Unfortunately, he got snatched up by the WWE. But guys like Timothy Thatcher, who were there in the past, and Loki, some of these guys that bring a different style to the table. And that's the great thing about MLW. I mean, you can watch an episode in 3-4 matches, and you get 3-4 different kinds of wrestling.
All right. Yeah, I think it's definitely very old school, and that's the one thing that I like it. Definitely very territory-ish, and like you said, kind of reminiscent of ECW. It's definitely one of the better products out there, and it definitely, there's just a core fan base that's not necessarily up on the mainstream. Do you watch current WWE at all, Blake?
Yeah, I pretty much watch everything.
Yeah. What do you think about Adam Pearce getting a little bit of the spotlight now?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I don't really know where they're going with it. I don't know if it's going to be a bait and switch. but
Right.
I don't imagine they're going to let him work a full match.
Right.
But I mean, it would certainly be cool if he's able to put some gear on.
Right.
I'd imagine it's going to be something where, he'll get a little hope spot or something, a little comeback, a little something. I can't imagine, obviously he's not going over.
Right.
So I don't know. It's put it this way. I'm interested and I'm going to watch.
I gotta tell you this. I actually kind of marked out Friday night just because of who he is, and I was like, no, yeah, it definitely was. And, I know he didn't come prepared. He didn't have any gear, but I'm wondering if at the pay-per-view he will come out in gear. But I did hear there are several names that they're supposed to be swapping him out with. I don't know how true it is, if it's just rumors or what, but I'm definitely very interested in seeing Adam Pearce wrestle on a WWE pay-per-view.
Who are they saying that he could get?
Rumor is that supposedly Kevin Owens will replace him, and then I also heard Seth Rollins at one point. And Andy, you mentioned a third person. I don't remember who.
Damian Priest name I've heard.
Oh yeah, Damian Priest will make his main roster debut in that match.
Well, I would say in reverse order, I think Kevin Owens would be the least intriguing, considering, I don't know. I mean, he's been, to me, it's like he's just lost to Roman a couple times. Right. So it's like, it wouldn't, I think Kevin Owens is great. Great talent, great piece of roster. I think he's over, but I don't know how much impact that has, kind of that third time's a charm sort of thing.
Right.
I think the second most intriguing would be Priest, just because, to see how he could hang in that role. I don't know about him coming in that main event spot. I don't know if that's really the position for him, at least at this point. But I'd be intrigued. And the number one would be Seth Rollins, because I would assume that would mean he'd be turning babyface. And, hasn't been on the roster. I mean, he hasn't wrestled in what, a month, 2 months, month?
Yeah, I think did him and Becky have the baby? Is that what? Yeah, is that why he left?
Was he on TLC?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't remember.
So
I did watch it. Unfortunately,
it's been roughly a month to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Survivor Series was his last show because he sacrificed himself to Survivor Series.
Okay, so it's been about 2 months since he's wrestled. So, I mean, and especially, everyone knows he just had a baby. It would make total sense to bring him back as babyface.
Yeah, that's the reason why somebody said that would make the most sense as to why he would turn babyface, is because he had the kid and all that other stuff, But whatever.
That's why they won't do it.
It's very possible.
Now here's my scenario. Okay, I say Pearce goes out. Pearce gets some licks in, then he starts getting beat up, and then all of a sudden, Steve Corino comes to make the save. and Corino gets beat up, and Jamie Noble comes out to make the save.
There you go.
And just keep going like that, like a gauntlet almost. Not a gauntlet, but you know what I mean. Anyway.
That's a Mid-Atlantic Dream.
You know Jamie Noble. I know you know Jamie Noble. You're a Florida guy.
Well, I'm really a Virginia guy.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, I am born and raised in Virginia, started in Virginia, and that's pretty much where I, that's where I'm from. But I have lived here a long time, and I went to college here, and I've done a lot in Florida. But I will always stick to be a Mid-Atlantic guy.
Question for you then: if you're a Virginia guy, I'm going to guess, because I know what your favorite baseball team is. I'm going to guess it's because of the minor league affiliation.
That would be, in a normal situation, a great guess. In my circumstance, it's actually just a great coincidence because my dad is from Queens.
Okay.
So I was raised on the Mets, and I just happened to be raised where their AAA team was up until I was about 20 years old.
Rick, I don't know if you're going to use any of this, but I know we have a lot of Mets fans who check out the podcast, the PWZ podcast. We do. It's a fact. And I got to say, I'm really excited about
This is the Andy hostile takeover.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't get involved in this conversation because I'm a Boston fan. So you guys go ahead.
And you don't have Lindor and Carrasco like the Mets do now, Rick. Okay.
All right.
What do you think about that, Blake?
Well, Rick might give us Jackie Bradley Jr. too, which would be fantastic. But
I think that's the direction we're going to go. I think that's what it sounds like to me.
But that would be great. I mean, Cookie Carrasco, to bring him in as a number 3-4 starter, especially with Syndergaard out till June or so with the elbow. I think he's going to be a nice piece. We've got him for a couple more years, and he definitely is that middle of the rotation kind of guy we haven't had. I mean, we've had some frontline depth, obviously with DeGrom and Syndergaard, but now you bring in Carrasco, we bring back Marcus Stroman, and I think the Mets now, and to throw David Peterson there in the back end of the lineup, it takes a lot of pressure off the Mets, I think, and gives them probably their best rotation that they've had, in at least 5-6 years since they went to the World Series. And this is a team that's been trying to tinker with that lineup to build around DeGrom, ever since he's won a Cy Young. And, now you throw Lindor in the mix in the field and in the lineup, and to go with Jeff McNeil, who's a bona fide batting title kind of guy, Pete Alonso, who looks like an MVP candidate potentially with his pop and his leadership, and guys like Michael Conforto, who looks to be a nice all-star kind of guy, and just the rest of that lineup. James McCann's a nice pickup, obviously, and just looking around, I mean, Nimmo's a nice pickup. I mean, it's a very promising future in Queens this year. And, I don't know if we're done yet in terms of free agency. As you mentioned, Jackie Bradley Jr. could be the direction that we're going in. And, I would not be surprised if they didn't go out and get a relief pitcher. I mean, they've already gotten Trevor May. They've signed a couple guys on minor league deals. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make a hard push for, like a Liam Hendricks or a Brad Hand, and try to offer a Juris Familia $10 million contract. I mean, I think the position the Mets are in right now. They're trying to remake the culture, and a guy like Familia was a part of the previous culture. And it's a time for the Mets to really turn things around. I think Steve Cohen is trying to make a big statement coming out of the gate, and not trying to just be like the old Mets and do things at a very slow pace.
Rick, I know you're a baseball fan. I don't know how much you know about the Met culture, but I don't know if this is fair, Blake, but I'm going to say it like this to put it in terms you might understand. It's almost like Mark Cuban bought Impact Wrestling. Hey, I'll leave it at that.
All right. Is there anything you want to plug, Blake?
Sure. I'll plug the social media. If you want to find me on Facebook, you can certainly find me on Facebook at Blake Chadwick, at StatGuyBAC on Instagram. I use Instagram pretty frequently. I don't tweet enough, but I'm certainly trying to get better at that. That's at StatGuyBAC as well. And follow me in all the events I do. I do a lot of MMA. I've kind of expanded my horizons a bit. And, I mean, outside of MLW and working with Gangrel's Wrestling Asylum, I'm not doing a ton of wrestling at the moment. I mean, I'm certainly taking any bookings, but, I'm not working with a lot of smaller companies right now. I'm doing a lot of MMA stuff, working with a company called XFC. We were live on NBC Sports about 2 months ago in Atlanta, Georgia, and we look to be live again there, I think, in about 6 weeks or so. I think we're going to be back on NBC in Oklahoma City. And got a lot of big stuff coming up with MMA. Could be debuting in a few new states this coming year in the next couple months. And, it's obviously a very weird time. So it's one of those situations where when things come, it's going to come just, whenever it comes. You're not going to see a lot of stuff planned far out because no one can really plan far out right now. So it's a weird time. It's interesting and, kind of play it by ear. But 2020 had some bad moments, but it finished real strong for me. And 2021, I mean, as things open back up again, hopefully we get more and more wrestling and, things go back to normal.
No Howard Brody shows coming up.
Howard Brody shows always, potentially on the horizon. I will say this, the Brand Ring Warrior is not officially dead. They are in talks with the most major organization that exists. As we've heard over the years, there is the potential for an expansion on the network and potential for, more opportunities for companies to fill in time for different pay tiers and things like that, like we've seen with Evolve and companies like that. So that's it floated about. It's nowhere near close to definite, but if that does happen, you could probably expect Ring Warriors to be a part of that programming.
Well, Howard Brody's been around a long time. We're big fans of Howard Brody here, and we know that, we look forward to seeing more of your work with Howard Brody in the future.
Well, listen, Howard's a great friend of mine. We speak on the phone multiple times a week, legitimately. I mean, Howard and I were close, and he gave me my first major opportunity in wrestling by making me a voice of Ring Warriors back in 2013. Got an opportunity to work, on an international platform and work with a lot of top talent guys that you see on TV every week, Adam Pearce included. Right now, the first match I ever called, Adam Pearce versus John Davis. That was my first match for Ring Warriors. And, John Davis, guy, Dark City Fight Club, former NWA World Tag Team Champions. So, a lot of great stuff I've done with Howard from Florida to Las Vegas. And hopefully we can do some more, which would probably be out in Las Vegas at a venue that would kind of resemble the Thunderdome. That's about the best I can give you. There's a venue out there that Howard would like to use, and that would probably happen if it does happen. And listen, we can only hope. But I can't really say much more because there isn't really much more. But, if something does come to fruition with additional programming, on your proverbial network, then you can expect Ring Warriors to be right at the forefront.
Well, I thank you for joining us.
No, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I know it's a little last minute, but we talked some Kings of Colosseum. It happened to be an appropriate week to have me on a big MLW event. And listen, I mean, we might have some big specials moving forward. And I definitely would keep an eye out on a potential collision course with Hammerstone and Fatu, because I think that's certainly what the people want to see.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And you got to come back sometime.
Hey, listen, I would love to be here. I mean, Andy, of course, you're Mr. Met, so I'm sure I'll be talking to you at some point over the next few months as we gear up for the most anticipated season probably in my lifetime. And then, of course, Andy, it's been a pleasure, and definitely want to be back on. We can talk more than MLW, talk AEW, WWE, Ring of Honor, Impact. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to watch much Impact these days because I don't get the channel, but I do try to follow what's going on. I have some friends that work there. So, I at least try to see what's up, but it looks like their little crossover right now with AEW, they're getting a nice little rub. So it's nice to see that for Impact. And, as long as everyone's doing good, I mean, it's the best for the business. And especially in a pandemic, if the business can be doing good, that's a good thing.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on. And do me a favor, save me a donut, all
right? Hey, listen, I'll save you one, but I don't know if AJ will. Guys, I appreciate it. Hope to be back sometime soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.